And channel 3 is varied. Number 4 is positive. Thank you. So now this panel here will look at the 10 years of development program and partnership in the joint of social landscape, transformation and healthcare building in Africa and beyond. So,
what situation I am in? My dad is asking me for Hotstar username and password. See, it's gone. It's come.
yeah,
Can I have the feed to my live?
who actually was
The same
one of
link.
the people as
The same thing which we did in the morning.
the president of the International Federation of Scientific Society. He worked and collaborated as a partner with Man Foundation. And Professor Simpson, I'd like you to elaborate on what you have observed in the last 12 years of the Man Foundation activity, and in terms of his capacity building as somebody who has said globally, the development of activities globally, what you can make of your impression in this activity. Thank you.
Thank you, Olodapa. It's a pleasure to be here once again for Illumina. Great progress over the years, and I'm extremely impressed. As I thought about the motif of the session today, it seems to me that what we're really looking at, Olodapa, and pardon? Oh, sir. Okay. Understand, I was not speaking loud enough, which is a complaint that's usually not given to me, so I will try to speak up
Ask
here.
Ishan to take
So,
note.
as I understand, one of the motifs of what we're going to be talking about this afternoon is, and I can paraphrase this, Merck Foundation, as it relates to what we're here for today, is extraordinarily successful. Sufficient amount of money to do what is needed, the ability to bring in others that will underscore what's happening here and to expand it. So in some of the last sessions, I gave a few thoughts about my experience with philanthropic organizations. I'm an OBGYN physician in the United States. I've been at this for quite a while, and some of the philanthropic organizations that I've been in differ from others. And then I had a stretch with the March of Dimes, which is a global affair related in special interest to the World Health Organization. And so I learned that side of global health or so. So I'm going to give you some thoughts about several different types of organizations in which I have had leadership roles, and let you know, in my opinion, why it works sometime and does not work sometime. So let's start with the easy ones. As an OBGYN physician with of interest genetic background, which is fairly unusual, I had several obvious philanthropic organizations in which I was the chief of service at hospitals. One of these was a large maternity hospital in an underserved area in Memphis, Tennessee. The other was in Houston at the Texas Medical Center. Both of these were obvious. You didn't need to convince the public or anyone that there was greater need than was provided by legislative mandates here. But in fact, it was limited because people in general said, well, this should be the responsibility for government, elected officials, not a donation from the public. And we all know that that's only part of the story. There's never enough money. If you had more money comparable to what you would get with the private hospitals, you could offer greater services than that was there. So this is number one, I'd say category A. easy, but you're limited in what you can achieve. So in order to do that with IVF, for example, you're not likely to succeed, particularly 20 years ago when IVF was just beginning. The second, relating to my experience with the March of Dimes, was that you can have great success, and because you have solved the problem, you then move over to something else to maintain the organization as a whole, because you've got a lot of people, you've got a large philanthropic network, and you want to sustain this and move it to other areas. So the March of Dimes is famous worldwide for developing and bringing to the fore the polio vaccine in the 1950s. A wonderful success, great publicity, couldn't ask for more. President Roosevelt in the United States actually developed a coin and said, send the dimes in to the post office box. You know, imagine trying to do that these days. It's not going to work too well because it's probably illegal, but it worked. So the March of Dimes is extremely famous for that. However, they were too famous in a sense that they succeeded. So there was a tremendous decrease in polio, such that, as we know, the huge parts of the world, it's rare that you have any polio that's still there. And certainly that happened in America or so. So the March of Dimes, beginning perhaps in the late 1960s, early 1970s, decided that it was going to move into the other area. So I was personally, as a young investigator, delighted the fact that they chose genetics. Genetics was not too popular in lots of areas of the world. And even in America, the funding from the National Institutes of Health was really not very good. So the March of Dimes had a winner. You know, my own career was helped initially by that. You know, we developed clinics everywhere, both in underserved and served areas, and it was really quite successful. Coming around maybe 2010, 2015, the March of Dimes decided, well, we've had enough of this genetics, let's move into other areas. And unfortunately, they made a tactical mistake. They thought that genetics would not continue at the rate it's going. And of course, now we know that this could not be further from the truth. Sequencing is very cheap. You can take a couple that's had a child with a birth defect or some sort of problem in the neonatal intensive care unit. You can study the father, the mother, and the child and have your answers back for all 20,000 genes in the space of about 72 hours. So the March of Dimes misunderstood the progress that was occurring. They should have taken advantage of their contribution to this and moved further. Instead, they chose areas that had already been occupied by other physicians, other clinical organizations in the United States. And to be honest, they're floundering right now. So they didn't understand the benefit of what they had done and how it had made change the medical world and the political world. Number three, jumping ahead, because when I was at the March of Dimes for 5 years, from 2012 to 2018, we had a lot to do with the Gates Foundation. So everybody knows that you don't have no one has more money than Gates. And you sometimes wonder why it has not done more than what it could do. We can cite several extremely successful ventures that they've done, but I would like to propose that the reason they have not done even more than what they could do is that, in point of fact, they were not focused on a single area. They enjoyed offering money for startups in regions. They enjoyed trying to do things technologically that probably were not necessary to be done in that fashion. And as a result of that, I can't honestly tell you what the focus is of the Gates Foundation right now. Then the final area is where we are today with the Merck Foundation. So First of all, there was a great padding from Russia and others in the early stages of the Merck Foundation, and that was education. So Oladapo and myself had opportunity to see the advances that were made in Kenya, as an example, with Russia. And it was clear that the organization was there already. I think it was genius to come up with the idea, Merck more than a mother, and I'm very impressed with that. And I think that's a deciding factor in how they've done. In addition, the choice of expanding IVF in sub-Saharan Africa in particular, but by analogy to that elsewhere in the world, with philanthropic money to train individuals capable of offering first-rate IVF programs, was genius. It was the time, it was aware that this was going to occur and it was going to be successful. And it was. We could talk about that. I've been at several of these meetings to discuss that per se. And the final concept is that the Merck Foundation was interested in expanding. They're lucky because they had the money to do so, but also the credibility based upon education, based upon expansion of services for IVF, made it credible for the Merck Foundation and what we see today to be involved in other areas that were not its initial expectation. So that's diabetes, that's hypertension, and that's oncology. So I think you can go wrong as a philanthropic organization. Merck has done well, but they had padding and they started out with a plan that has proved to be very successful.
Thank you very much, Professor Simpson. I agree that Merck Foundation has gone far. And for the benefit of those who are probably attending this luminary for the first time, and also for the benefit of many of us here, I think I'd like to give you a little bit background of what Dr. Rasha Kelej did. I believe Professor Frank Sagenberg Havenkamp had the idea to contribute to Africa, and Russia was given the corporate social responsibility. And one of the things that came to their mind was tackling infertility in Africa. I make bold to tell you that when I finished my postgraduate studies in the United States of America in 1979, I wanted to go back to Nigeria. And I submitted a grant because that was when the test tube baby was a breakthrough. And I submitted a grant to the Rockefeller Foundation that I wanted to do some research so that I too can go into this area of in vitro fertilization. My friend in Rockefeller, Dr. Siegel, told me that that grant will not be funded if I'm going to Africa, because Africa has population. So that was the mindset at that time. So, but if I was going to do a research in male infertility, there's a lot of fun there. So what did I do? I wrote the grant. I got the grant for male infertility. But luckily for me, all the equipment that will be used to do that research can also help to do research in vitro fertilization. And lo and behold, we did the work on male infertility research. And we also did the research into in vitro fertilization. And we became the first center to produce test tube baby in West Africa and Sub-Saharan region in 1986. The point I'm trying to drive is that when I go to meetings where the likes of Professor Simpson are there are probably just one or two blacks in that meeting. And that has to do with global fertility. Nobody from Africa was written in WHO as doing anything on infertility. So I was so pleased today when the First Lady in Burundi was saying that they now have 3 babies from IVF. Please, let's clap for Merck Foundation for what they've done. And what I'd like to do as the president of African Reproductive Care Society is that we have problem, which is one of the capacity we need to do in collecting African data. Please, if you are from any country and you are doing IVF, make sure you get me the numbers you are doing before the end of today. That's number one. Number two, as a country, it is our responsibility to be in the International Federation of Fertility Society, where the global voice is being heard on infertility. Please make sure. Now, the next thing that we did was, if we have to train people from Africa in this field, how will we make sure they come back to their countries? So Jolie Simpson and I said, if they are sent to Europe or to America, can you tell me what will have happened? They will stay there. In our country, we call it Japa syndrome. Once you land in America or in Europe, you stay there. So we conceptualize the idea that maybe they can go to countries where if they go, they will get their training and they will have to come back. And that was how India was one of the countries. So I will now call on Professor Sridhar, Banana Valley, to give us how the training has been for African capital development. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And our, Tata Memorial Center is a standalone cancer center. So we train, or we do only oncology. So our training will be in the field of oncology. And we all know, last few days, you must have read in the papers also, that oncology is the next cardiology. Some years back, cardiology was the #1 branch. Most patients were in that field. So everyone wanted to get trained in cardiology. Even when we were residents, actually, there was no oncology training in our centers, in our medical colleges. But now things have changed. Now you see that the number of cancer cases is increasing worldwide. And by 2050, it is estimated that more than 27 million new cancer cases will be diagnosed every year. And most importantly, again, another part, when we were training, it was told that cancer is a disease of the developed world. Low middle income countries don't have to worry about cancer, but that is no longer so. And out of this 27 million new cases which will be diagnosed in 2050, 70% of this will be in the low and middle income countries. So we have to make sure that unless we are ready to face this epidemic, it will be really disaster, because many countries still are not ready to face this epidemic of cancer. And that is why at the Tata Memorial Center, actually, along with surveys and research, we take a lot of pride in education. And there are many private centers worldwide, actually, in most developed countries, they advertise for the patients to come. We never do that. Actually, at Tata Memorial Center, we see nearly 10% of the cancer cases diagnosed in the country. So we have more than 110,000 new cancer patients who are who visit or who come to the center every year. But, so education is a very important part of our things that we do. And not only, there are, again, when we say training, most of the time you think of training only the doctors. And that also it will be, medical oncologists, surgical oncologists, radiation therapists. But along with that, at Tata Hospital, we do a lot of training in basically in technical courses. So, there are physicists who need to be trained in the field of radiation oncology. Radiologists have to be, technicians have to be trained. The nuclear medicine technicians have to be trained because machines are coming. But if you don't have trained manpower to man these machines, again, it will be difficult to use those machines. And even regulatory wise, you need to have trained technicians who can run this machine. So we do a lot of training in such other technical branches also, and other medical branches also, like interventional radiology, pathology. Again, unless you diagnose a cancer properly, you cannot treat it. So pathology, molecular pathology, all that is our forte, and a lot of training in that. So, before COVID, we used to get a lot of, through Merck Foundation, we trained nearly 100, doctors, nurses, etc. But post-COVID, I think the number has gone down. So I will request again the Merck Foundation that we can increase the numbers again. And along with the Tata Memorial Hospital in Mumbai and ECTRAC in Mumbai, we now have 9 other centers across the country, which again see more than nearly thousands of patients in these centers also. So I think there's a lot of possibility of training in the other hospitals, also of the other units of Tata Memorial Center. So please take advantage of that. And basically we have various ways through which you can get trained. The number one is the Merck Africa Foundation. So that is the number one. But along with Merck Africa Foundation, we even have the Indian, what we call the India African Forum Summit, IAFS. If you go on the net and see, through that, Government of India supports training of doctors and technical people from African countries. And the third one is the IAEA, which again trains people in the field of radiation oncology, technicians and doctors. So there are various forums through which you can ask for the support. And lastly, we have our own, Tata Hospital has a thing called National Cancer Grid, NCG. It's, there's a NCG global part through which there are, the funds kept separately for training of people from various countries, not specifically Africa, but yeah, the African can apply for that and get funding through that also. So a lot of opportunities at present. And Tata, we always say that Tata is the best center to get trained because there are thousands of patients. We have the whole infrastructure, right from a cobalt machine to a proton machine. We have so all the infrastructure in surgery. We have right from plain surgery to laparoscopic surgeries to robotic surgeries. In medical oncology, we do metronomic therapies, which are simple therapies, to the CAR T cell therapies and targeted therapies. So the whole infrastructure is there. So I think that's a good thing. And like you mentioned, India makes sure that none of the trained people will stay back. They'll have to go back. So I think they have to go back to your countries. And second thing, the way what we do is so implementable that the next day you go to your country, you can start using it, unlike the teaching from the West, where many times you cannot implement it in the clinic when you go back. So I think overall it makes a great place to come and get trained. So we are open. Anyone wants to take our help, please, you are welcome to apply to the institution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Banavali. I have seen their center in Mumbai. Tata Institute is one of the great institutes for oncology, and he has significantly helped in helping to develop human capital in Africa, and we thank you for what you've done. Also, now I want this to be a little bit interactive, so I want the members of the panel, they will give us a very short aspect of their role or of contributions or experience with Merck Foundation in terms of building capacity. And then we'll give the audience time to ask a few questions, and then we can go around with time. So I'll call on Dr. Zed Nabe from, he's an assistant permanent secretary in Mauritius, the Ministry of Health and Welfare. I want you to tell us your experience in with Merck Foundation so far in terms of this development.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor, for this question. At the outset, I would like to congratulate Merck Foundation on the occasion of its 7th anniversary. And I would also like to thank the Mauritian team for coming over to the Africa-Asia Luminary. The Mauritian team is over there. In the absence of our first ladies, we've got a number of second ladies in our team. Please give them a big round of applause, the Mauritian team. Thank you very much. So I've singled out one example that I would like to talk about, and that is the area of fertility. As we all know, the prevalence of fertility, according to the WHO, stands at around 17.5% of the adult population. And in Mauritius, we have a contraceptive prevalence study, which was done in 2014, 2015. And from there emanates statistics that infertility prevalence stands around 10% of the adult population. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to tell you one thing. Prior to 2022, before Merck Foundation sponsored capacity building courses in fertility treatment in Mauritius was quite sidelined under the obstetrics and gynecology unit. But after 2022, now the Ministry of Health has set up a proper fertility clinic in one of the 5 regional hospitals of the island, thanks to the training provided by Merck Foundation. In the same line, government has also invested massively in the acquisition of equipment to sustain fertility treatment in Mauritius, both for the clinic and for the laboratory. As at now, we have conventional treatment for fertility which is being offered in all regional hospitals, and potential candidates for IUI are being referred to that one fertility clinic in the northern part of the island. And all of this is being championed by one of our doctors who is here in the crowd, Dr. Lilo Dari. Please raise your hand so that everyone will know who is piloting this whole project at the ministry. Thank you very much, Dr. Lilo Dari. In the same line, focusing on the theme of this panel discussion, which is 12 years of development programs in the journey of patient care landscape and capacity building. We all know that capacity building and patient care landscape goes hand in hand. The more you build capacity, the more it beautifies the patient care landscape. This is known to everybody. And the collaboration that exists between Merck Foundation and African countries has no doubt helped us in addressing critical healthcare challenges in many areas. In Mauritius, we have been using evidence-based strategies where we have improved the quality of care being dispensed to patients. In addition, we have also, most importantly, redefined the parameters for patient care management, and we have issued clinical guidelines which are now being used in all regional hospitals. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the impacts of these scholarships are many. And we have also seen increased accuracy in diagnosis. We have seen improved patient adherence to treatment, and ultimately all this has led to improved patient outcomes. But this is not all. We know that challenges lies ahead of this. Challenges in terms of technological advancement, challenges in terms of demographic shifts, and challenges in terms of emerging diseases like COVID, which we just recovered from. And I bet you that some countries are still recovering from COVID as of now. So as we look towards the future, I believe that with the unwavering support from Merck Foundation, we can adopt the philosophy of Hakuna Matata. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nabi. Thank you, thank you. There is no doubt that there has been a significant shift in the process. When the word Merck, more than a mother, came into being, it was one of the instruments that Merck Foundation had employed to destigmatize infertility. And I remembered when we were in Uganda, men who had been hiding because of their infertility, they were now coming up because they know there are solutions to it. And we'll go more to that. And one of the instruments that was deployed was to use national fertility societies and national medical societies to work with Merck in order to disseminate this, because they can't do it alone. And so they use such societies. And today, the Global Society of Infertility is now preaching what we call more joy to families. That is, if you don't have a baby, that family is not happy. And having a baby is a human right. So we should have more joy in our families. And Merck, more than a mother, is also doing that and also doing more. And they've expanded beyond that into other specialties. I will now call on Dr. Kanemi, Dr. Ruben Kanemi, the Executive Board Member and Chairperson, Namibia Medical Society, to give us your experience on this. Namibians, clap for your...
No, thank you, Prof. We are talking of 12 years, but as Namibian, I think we joined the journey a bit late, and probably not from the beginning of 12 years. But I want to say we are doing fine as a country with a small population. As of today, I think there are around 92 beneficiaries of the Merck Foundation scholarship. And I would like particularly to, before I delve in our partnership as a society with Merck Foundation and how it was born, I would like to give one example on the impactfulness of our Merck Foundation in our country. We have a colleague within the hospital that I'm heading as a medical superintendent who was trained in cancer care, and upon return to the country, she managed to set up an oncology unit, which is really making a difference in the country. And I want to recognize Dr. Josephine Agustinus, the head of our oncology unit. So the programs of Merck Foundation, as we all know, have a overarching intention of, serving those that are underserved. And it's well in line with, I think, the song that most African countries nowadays are singing of universal health coverage. In Namibia, a number of colleagues have been trained, and they are really making a difference at the individual levels as doctors. But we have observed that there was the programs of Merck Foundations and the members of the alumni, when they finish, they were not well incorporated into the system such that they get support from the ministry to set up dedicated clinic in the area of specialization. So when we observe this now as a society, and we had discussion with the management of Merck Foundation when they visited Namibia, we agreed to come in so that we can ensure that all these colleagues, especially at the district level for our hospitals, having a system that was designed from the primary healthcare approach. And that's the whole purpose of promotion and prevention, which is less costly, as opposed to managing already complication and other things. So we are coming in, we are having discussions and collaboration with the ministry so that we can identify these colleagues wherever they are within the country, and lobby for support from the ministry so that these colleagues have a structured facility, they have equipment that they need to apply their knowledge that they have gained within Merck Foundation so that they really make the true impact that was the initial purpose of the program. So as for now, yes, we are making differences in our own individual capacity, but we want this program to be streamlined and incorporated within the program of the ministry so that the impact can be really positive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I think he has raised a very key, fundamental issue that needs to be looked at. And maybe when we do the ministerial panel, we'll have to talk about that. That means some of the people who have acquired the training and the capacity, they go back into the country, and rather than work in the public institution, they set up their private practice. I know it happens a lot. Now, in Africa, we have no choice. And we are realizing that in Nigeria, where, if I will tell you something, Britain, United Kingdom, said they needed about 29,000 doctors and 76,000 nurses to work in UK. And where are they coming from? From Africa. In my own center, the nurses are given immediate visa for husband and themselves to go to UK and practice. Same goes for doctors. So what can we adopt? Those who are around have to be made use of effectively. Consequently, those in the private sectors can be given joint appointment in the university to help, or in the public sectors. That is the approach we might have to take. It was an approach that United States of America took long time ago, where you can have dual appointment. You can work in the university, you can work in the public sector. This concept of no private practice, excuse me if I can say it, was a colonial hands down they gave to us so that we can't multitask. That is my thinking. But I will switch gear and go to Dr. Thomas Gebri from Rwanda. He is an associate professor in OBGYN. Can you please give us your experience in your center?
Thank you, Professor. Yes, I'm currently working in Rwanda as a reproductive endocrinology and infertility subspecialist. But the majority of my collaboration with Merck Foundation has been when I was working in Ethiopia. I was the CEO of the first public IVF center in Ethiopia. And now I am succeeded by my good friend, Dr. Masarat. Shout out to her. She will be involved in the panel discussion tomorrow. So starting out at Addis, we had the infrastructure, but we didn't have the human resource for the IVF center that we have built. So we contacted Merck Foundation in Dr. Russia, and the first embryologists, which were 3, were trained by the Merck Foundation. And when they came back, we had reservations because it was just a 3 months training. We weren't sure that we would depend on them because it was a relatively short training. But the quality of the training showed because even in the first batch, we had very good success. And in the subsequent batches also, we had excellent success with the IVF. And later on, those embryologists they were able to produce more embryologists. Now currently we have 6 embryologists at the public IVF center. And this center is doing more than 1,000 to 1,500 cycles per year. So it's a big success story, not only embryologists, the RAI specialists also starting out. We had a fellowship program and we contacted Merck about that also, and they sponsored the first 2 RAI fellows, and they went there, trained, and came back. Now the RAI fellowship program was able to produce 14 subspecialists. So Merck Foundation has done a big thing for us, and it's continuing. And it's not just training, but also subsequently the next generation is benefiting from those first trainers. And finally, where I'm working now, I'm trying to replicate the same thing in Rwanda. I work at the Rwanda Military Hospital, and it is also the only public IVF center in the country. I am the only RAI subspecialist there. We just recently approved a fellowship program, and we are also trying to approve an MSc program in embryology there. And we implore Merck Foundation to continue their gracious support to the Rwanda Military Hospital also, and I'm sure we will replicate this success story in Ethiopia there also. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. One thing that I have to let us know is that the capacity development, capacity building, once you've been trained, in the words of the Plato, those who have the touch, they must pass the knowledge of touch. And when I became a professor in my university, I always tell my colleagues that a professor is not known by what he professes alone, but by how many professors he's been able to train or to mentor. Therefore, if you are an embryologist or a reproductive endocrinologist in Ethiopia, you must multiply. That is how Africa can grow. Last is that in Ethiopia, if you're doing IVF and I don't know you, it's not good, because I am the voice of Africa internationally. Please make sure you can give me your data so that when I sit in the international forum, I can beat my chest that yes, in Mauritius, in Rwanda, this is going on, and we have more credibility globally and with WHO. Thank you. I thank you for what you're doing, and let us please give him a round of applause for his work. Now, let me go to another training program we have, which has helped us significantly in capital development, and that is, we've talked about the training program in India in oncology. We also employ training program in India in fertility development and preservation. So I will now call on Professor Dr. Satish Kumar Adiga. I'm sure he has trained a number of people here.
Thank you, Professor Ashiro. At the outset, I would like to thank Dr. Asha for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be a part of this luminary. Manipal joined hands with Merck Foundation in 2018 in its prestigious Merck More Than a Mother program. And we have, so far, we have trained 108 embryologists from 27 countries. And I'm glad to tell that those trainees who came to us, they went back as most of them as their first embryologist of their country and have established their program. The results, the success, what they have told us in their success story, the success is comparable to any established centers, which we really proud of them. And the best example I can share is Professor Amado, who is right here, who was with us for embryology training. Now he has taken a leadership position as the president of Giraffe. Congratulations. Yeah. So apart from embryology training program, we are also partnership with the Mars program, Merck Foundation Africa Research Summit. As we all know, the research is a part and parcel of any healthcare system. Research only with the research we can progress. And we are delighted to be a part of Merck Foundation in the this Mars program. It's a fantastic program identifying young researchers in Africa and motivate them, promote them, and to take up challenging cutting edge research in their countries. So we are partner, they come to Manipal, we train them over a period of 3 months, and then they go back and set up the work on the local problem. The one example I can say is Professor Stefan, who was with us. He was the Mars the award winner who was with us 3 months ago. Basically, he is a radiation oncologist, and his interest was to set up a fertility preservation center in his country, because fertility preservation or the oncofertility is a new emerging area. There are not many places offer this. So he was with us. He was trying to address the challenges, opportunities, barriers in setting up of oncofertility program. And we are very happy that now he is in the process of setting up the facility in his country. And I would like to thank Merck Foundation for all these opportunities and creating research culture in Africa, which is very important, because without research, we never progress. And with the research, apart from improving the patient care, if our research is product oriented, definitely we can bring down the cost of our treatment. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Satish Kumar, one of the trainers of embryologists for Merck Foundation Human Capacity Development. As I said, training is important. We must pass the torch. I, in Nigeria, have trained so many, not just embryologists, IVF physicians. Some of them have gone up to establish their clinics. When we started in Nigeria, there was just only one IVF clinic. And then by 1999, there were 4 IVF clinics in Nigeria. Today, the number of IVF clinics in Nigeria is 190, still going strong. So we are helping. And I also want to say that in the 1980s, when we started this, 90% of patients who had infertility problem and needed IVF went abroad to Europe or to America. Today, nobody leaves Nigeria to go and do IVF. In fact, many people are now coming back from America, Europe to Nigeria to do IVF. It's now a source of medical tourism rather than wasting foreign exchange on treatment. I recommend this to all of us in our various countries. When you start it, you are the nucleus, but you can grow yourself. With that, I will call on somebody who has benefited from this, who has now established himself again. Bonjour, Monsieur Professor Kolegu Français from Ivory Coast, my colleague and friend from Ivory Coast. Comment allez-vous?
Alors, oui, ça va très bien, Président. Ça va très bien, Professeur Achio. Je suis heureux que vous m'ayez donné l'opportunité de participer à cette table ronde où plusieurs experts africains et du monde se retrouvent pour échanger. En effet, nous avons commencé exactement comme vous, avec 4 centres à travers le GIRAF qui regroupe 16 pays africains francophones, de l'Afrique centrale et de l'Afrique de l'Ouest. Et aujourd'hui, nous sommes à plus d'une quarantaine. Cette démarche a commencé en 2009 et nous continuons grâce à l'implication de la Fondation Merck. Et nous avons aussi associé les communicateurs des différents pays qui nous permet d'atteindre nos objectifs. Je dois dire aussi avec beaucoup de pertinence que nous avions commencé assez difficilement et l'implication de la Fondation nous a permis de booster ou encore d'améliorer nos compétences. Et je voudrais bien répéter le professeur Chatis qui m'a reçu avec beaucoup d'élégance dans son centre en Inde. C'est une particularité de l'Afrique, comme vous l'aviez dit aussi. Antérieurement, on devait aller en Europe. Aujourd'hui, de plus en plus, les pays africains francophones, il y a des centres. Il y en a certains, je crois qu'il y a 8 qui participent à l'enregistrement des centres. Et vous avez aussi les données. Et nous estimons que l'Odyssée doit continuer. Nous estimons aussi que nous devons améliorer ce que nous faisons avec d'autres objectifs, notamment la formation, la recherche, surtout au niveau des plantes médicinales, surtout au niveau de l'approche africaine, parce que traiter un patient dans notre contrée africaine n'est pas la même chose que si on devait le traiter avec le contexte européen ou encore d'autres continents. Je pense que nous sommes tous dans une dynamique dès lors que nous décidons de travailler ensemble. Je pense aussi que la collaboration doit continuer. Merci bien.
Thank you very much, Professor Kolabele. I think that one of the things that is being stressed, which I should say, is collaboration. We need it in Africa. That was the reason that about 9 years ago, we founded the African Fertility Society, which has now evolved to African Federation of Fertility Society. And that was also why we founded the African Reproductive Care for all groups. So, and by being in this group, we can network within Africa. We can make publications. We can do research that connects all of us together. And we are also, as an individual country, supposed to be part of the Global Fertility Society, so that our voices can be heard and we can make impact, which meets every 3 years for a World Congress, which will be in Tokyo next April. If you need more details, I will provide it. Now, I thank him a lot. He is the president of Giraffe, which they have been doing for a long time, which is the Francophone African countries that practice fertility. I must congratulate them for that. So let's, and very democratic society too. I think before we go around to the audience, let me quickly call on Professor Mustafa Tayam, obstetrician and gynecology specialist from Senegal. I think he is the president of the Senegalese Society of Fertility. You're welcome. And I have an appointment with you by the time you finish, because your society must be well represented internationally too. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, professeur Achiro. Effectivement, je suis le président de la Société sénégalaise de fertilité et un membre actif du GRAF, Groupe interafricain d'études et de recherche sur la fertilité, qui est aussi membre de la Fédération africaine de fertilité, dont vous êtes le patron, le boss. Alors, s'agissant de l'expérience du Sénégal, nous avons rejoint le bateau un peu tard, en 2018, lors des 5e éditions du congrès de Merck Foundation qui s'est tenu à Dakar. C'était un lieu idéal pour faire le déclic au niveau de nos dirigeants et de nos porteurs de voix, parce que jadis, la prise en charge de la fertilité ne faisait pas partie des principales recommandations des normes et protocoles au Sénégal. Et la prise en charge de l'infertilité, notamment la fécondation in vitro, ne se faisait que dans le privé. Au décours de ce 5e congrès, les dirigeants à l'époque ont pris la ferme décision de construire un centre de procréation médicalement assistée dans le public, c'est-à-dire à l'hôpital d'Al Djam, qui doit bientôt commencer ses activités. Et à côté également, en plus de l'infertilité, un centre de greffe de moelle par rapport à la prise en charge de l'oncologie, voire même de l'oncofertilité. Nos dirigeants se sont rendus compte d'une chose. D'abord, par rapport à la fertilité, il faut d'abord prévenir l'infertilité. Si l'infertilité est en place, il faut la prendre en charge. Mais également, on parle encore de plus en plus de la préservation de la fertilité pour les patientes ou les couples qui sont fertiles, mais qui doivent bénéficier d'un traitement oncologique cytotoxique qui pourrait altérer les gamètes. Alors, à partir de cette période, la Fondation Merck est venue nous donner un grand appui, parce que nous qui avons bénéficié de cette formation avant la Fondation Merck, on était obligés en tant que pays francophone de débourser beaucoup d'argent, d'aller en France, de faire une formation théorique et revenir suivre nos aînés qui faisaient de la procréation médicalement assistée. Alors, avec l'appui de la Fondation Merck, nous avons eu à former des gynécologues, des embryologistes qui, avec l'exemple typique que nous avons, il s'agit du docteur Ndeye Khadisen, qui est là et qui fait un bon boulot, qui est à 200 km de Dakar, qui nous permet de prendre en charge des patientes qui faisaient 300 km pour venir à Dakar et se faire prendre en charge dans des conditions d'infertilité. Et l'objectif, c'était l'équité territoriale, d'avoir au moins de petits centres ou des petites unités de prise en charge de l'infertilité, en insistant sur le fait que la prise en charge de l'infertilité n'est pas que la fécondation in vitro. Alors, on a voulu, avec l'apport de la Fondation Merck, mais également des autres médecins, d'installer des unités d'assistance médicale à la procréation de niveau 1 ou jusqu'à l'insémination pourrait être effectuée dans les différentes régions. Pour l'instant, nous en avons 3 où vraiment c'est possible de le faire et avec l'appui de la Fondation Merck, il y a d'autres médecins qui vont partir, des biologistes, mais également des oncologues dans la prise en charge de cette infertilité. Nous travaillons ensemble et c'est ça qui a permis à nos autorités de faire voter des textes de loi par rapport à la prise en charge de l'infertilité. Et nous faisons partie des rares pays où il y a des textes par rapport à la prise en charge de l'infertilité et à la fécondation in vitro. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Well said. I think Dr. Taham has made significant contribution, and actually most countries started like that. I remembered even in Sweden, the IVF center, they would drive miles with the follicular fluid to go to a center where it will be examined. And also people used to come from different places. So, but hopefully, gradually, the actions will multiply so that they don't have to do that. People used to travel and take planes from Port Harcourt, from Sokoto to come to my clinic. But now there are other centers. And what we hope is that as these small centers are growing, the major one will be bigger and be more evolved to do things that you mentioned, fertility preservation. For example, women who are going late into having babies, they can preserve their egg. It's very important. Some women will come to me by the time they are 41, they want to preserve their egg. I said, what were you doing? You should have come maybe 5 years ago, but they don't know. Also, he mentioned something critical, is that infertility treatment starts from prevention. And let me give you some of the basic examples that I want you to take home today. Women who drive barefooted, they are absorbing antimony from the pedal, the rubber pedals of the car. They are made with antimony. Antimony is embryotoxic. Pesticides that we use in the farms, they can go from 1 generation to 3 generations to affect fertility. So there are clear and present dangers in our environment. Things we eat, things we inhale, and things we put on our body. A woman is supposed to use in a year, in a lifetime, 1 ton of lipstick. So if you don't read the type of lipstick you are applying, if it contains lead, or you make sure it's a good product, you may be absorbing environmental toxins of heavy metal. So be careful. There are more on it. Look in the literature or look for some of my publications. Now, I thank them for this. So I will ask for 1 or 2 audiences questions, and then also from the panel to ask questions if they have. If there's anybody in the audience, to anybody in the panel, please raise up your hand so that it could be not a one-way, a two-way discussion. Yes, go ahead. Can you please pass the loudspeaker to him? Yes.
Merci de me donner la parole. Je suis Jean-Claude Pluvalier de la Côte d'Ivoire, président des journalistes de Côte d'Ivoire. Ma question est la suivante. On parle d'infertilité au niveau de votre société, mais en réalité, il y a un souci. On se rend compte qu'il y a un gros travail qui se fait au niveau de la fondation. Il y a un souci de communication. Là, je vous ai écouté, vous les experts, j'ai vu qu'il y a eu beaucoup d'informations, mais combien de personnes dans les populations africaines sont au courant de tout le travail qui se fait? Quand on sait que la stigmatisation au niveau de l'infertilité continue toujours dans nos campagnes, dans nos villages et même dans nos villes. Voilà ma question. Merci.
Very good questions. Are people in our various societies aware of this problem of infertility? We know that Merck Foundation is helping in capacity development. It's also helping in advocacy, but how are we spreading it in our societies? Does anybody want to answer from this side? And then somebody from this side. Well, what some of the things that I did, let me tell you, when I got back from the United States and established my practice, yes, is to have a column in the Nigerian newspapers. I write every week on fertility health, and I give advice. And I tell them consequences of various things. It's a weekly thing. And because of that, most journals, and television program in Nigeria will often call me to address this thing. And it's a public forum. Even before then, I did a magazine on reproductive health. Especially when you talk about men. Men, they are the last person to come to the clinic. So, and maybe I will talk more about that. Let Professor Simpson ask your question.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment that I had the privilege about 7 or 8 years ago of watching, still here, of watching Oladapa deal with the issue of males not admitting that they are the problem. Of course, it's much easier to blame women, and it was prevalent in the United States 10, 20 years ago, but I'm happy to say and to report that that's really not the case now. You know, you may think the regular patient that sees you and is a male and clearly has the problem, or at least needs to be evaluated for the problem. You think you have a problem, but we have a problem also. If try to convince a professional football player who weighs 300 pounds that they are the cause of the infertility in this population. And we've done that by essentially making them the leader in various clinics, and in particular in philanthropic organizations. So getting soccer players, getting wrestlers, whatever you have, really will work. Instead of there being the problem, they're the solution. And you are the solution for there. Just as a final closure for comments about America, I will say that we are very pleased that one thing we've done that we have been very derelict in doing. We were criticized by the British for many years for multiple transfers of embryos. You know, in the last American Society of Reproductive Medicine, which Oladapo goes to frequently, and I'm a past president, the statistics are that 2.5% of all babies in America last year were the results of in vitro fertilization. The success rate is very high. You know, the 96%, 96 now, were singleton pregnancies, singleton IVF pregnancy. And that certainly was not the case even 10 years ago in terms of doing that. And the reason for that, I'm sorry, I gave you the wrong figure, 96% or singleton, and 76% are the results, is the overall figures for single embryo transfer. So we're just not doing multiple embryo transfer, and the results show. It took a long time. If you suddenly make that transition here, it's not going to work overnight, but it does work.
Thank you very much. I think Professor Simpson touched on two critical things. One, which is very critical, male infertility. We cannot overstress it. As a matter of fact, when we now talk about infertility, we will say that it occurs in the men and in the women. We are taking the women as number two, not number one. But it's a transition, because I have men that will call me. They'll say, hey, hello, Professor. I want to refer my wife to you. This is your IVF. I want her to see you. Then I'm thinking in my mind, your wife or both of you. But as far as he's concerned, by the time they come to your clinic, you find out that the problem is actually with him. But even to say it out, that, and he knows that, even to say it out, he is shifting the blame on the wife immediately. So we have a lot to do to educate our men that there are solutions to their problem. And when there are, they don't mind coming. I would say that 20 years ago in my clinic, usually you will see the women. Even these women who came, they were afraid to say that they were coming for infertility. Today, it's now acceptable doing IVF, and the men, they come with their wife to the clinic. That is the final goal. The next question, and we need to emphasize this, and some of the things that can cause male infertility, like overheating the testes, long distance driving, or using things like artificial sweeteners, and so many other things like that. Now, the second part has to do with transfer of embryos. Now, because you have a clinic, you have the tendency to want to, and you are in this field, to want to transfer more than 1 or 2 or 3 embryos, or sometimes 4. Be careful, because when you become good, you will suddenly see a pregnancy of 5, and that is serious. And we don't want that. So in our own environment, we know we're going through transition in Africa. So what we are recommending for now is that try 2 transfers. If you can't do 1, 2. Don't do 3 unless the woman is above 40 years old. And even so, she has to sign, because when they tell me I want 3 embryos, I said, do you want my name to say that this professor transferred 3 and you ended up with 4 pregnancy, 4 quadruplex? It should not be in the 21st century. So, but really, if you are good, when you transfer 1 embryo, you are increasing the chances of implantation. Because when you are transferring 2 or 3, there's a lot of competition between these 3 small embryos you put there, fighting for survival, and that creates problem. Thank you. Yes.
Just a really quick statistic that's worth repairing. If you have 3 embryos and you deliver 3 embryos, then the average gestational length is about 31 to 32 days. And unless you've got an exceptional neonatal intensive care unit, which does occur in Africa, you're not going to you're going to have 0 results at the end of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, what he's saying is that if you implant 3 and you have an ongoing triplet, they are not going to last more than 32 weeks averagely. So you have to have an intensive care unit, and you may end up losing the mother and the baby. So let us be careful. So I think, okay, yes, gentlemen, you want to go ahead in gray jacket.
Thank you very much for the panel. I think there are things I thought I wanted to hear more about in this story of infertility. The first thing is affordability. I don't know if you guys know that it is still far-fetched for the people who want the service to get it. Yes, fertility centers are mainly based in urban centers. So the rural population in most African countries, whether you're talking about Windhoek or Kigali or Abuja, they don't get these services. Like where I was working in Ombalantu, yeah, they have no access to fertility, for example. So I wish we could use Merck Foundation as an advocacy platform. We had all these first ladies here, and through them, that governments can probably waive taxes on commodities that are used in fertility. Otherwise, it's still, we can talk about it here, but it will not get to the people that desperately need it. Then the second is, you talked about people going to the West and Europe to train. And now we are flying to India. Professor Diga was my professor. I'm very proud of you, sir. But the issue is, we don't have enough training centers still in Africa. So we are still back in terms of manpower. So affordability, accessibility, and healthcare worker training, capacity building are very important things if we are going to make this more than a social talk. Thank you.
Very good questions. I will answer some, and then I will ask anybody in the panel to answer. In terms of affordability, yes. In fact, it is so bad that like in our own country, with the devaluation of the currency, it's difficult And how can we help affordability? Government is meant to have insurance. That's one of the things we are rooting for. Health insurance for IVF, if you have it, like they do in the US, they will give you insurance for at least 2 or 3 attempts. Number 2, if even in Africa, we can start having some manufacturing centers. Some of the 2 countries in Africa where the cost of IVF is low is Egypt and South Africa, because they are manufacturing those products there. We have asked our own government to encourage pharmaceutical companies to start manufacturing in the country. But you see, when you look at the businessman, what he's calculating is different. He's trying to calculate his profit. The next thing you talked about in terms of capacity development, we have started an institute in Lagos, Institute for Assisted Reproductive Technology, where we can train embryologists and reproductive endocrinologists, and also another 2 institutes where they're training reproductive endocrinologists. So these are things that we need to do. And because Africa is a network, and because there is now telemedicine and Zoom, you can start a program and you can get lecturers from different places to Zoom in and give the lectures, and then the practical maybe can send in for a period and do the, so these are things we can do. I think that is what I have. I don't know whether other people have comments on this.
Yeah, you know, most of the talk was on reproduction and IVF, but being an oncologist, you know, we talk about Charles Darwin and his theory of evolution. And he had told years back that it's not the strongest that survive or the most intelligent that survives, but the species who can change or adapt themselves to the new situation, they are the ones who survive. And I think the present situation in Africa and even in many of the other countries is we have changed from population explosion to now infertility, and that's really becoming an important issue even in a country like India, because of various reasons, including lifestyle changes and so many other things. So I think we have to change, and even from the female fertility to male fertility, I think so time has come that we adapt to these changes and make the develop the infrastructure accordingly, so that this, like the gentleman told, even in the remote places where it's really required, all these facilities can reach. And I think through the various organizations, including Merck Foundation, I think the training of manpower has to improve so that this facilities can reach to the most deserving population.
Thank you. I think also the same thing, of course, for oncology treatment. Oncology treatment is very expensive. Even using linear accelerators. In Africa, there are very few centers that have proton and the cyclotron. So this, and because that requires a lot of serious funding, which I'm sure Merck Foundation is ready to train, but to develop, to actually put in those proton technology is not cheap. I saw somebody wanted to ask a question there. Okay, the lady in yellow.
Merci.
And, okay, go ahead. You and then the lady in yellow, correct.
Merci. Je suis Ambroisine Memede, je suis journaliste et je viens du Togo. Alors, ma question, la première partie a déjà été prise en compte et je voudrais demander à Dr Thiam, à combien s'élève aujourd'hui dans votre pays la procréation médicalement assistée? Comment avez-vous fait au Sénégal pour que les autorités prennent à cœur la question et décident à ce que dans un centre public, il y ait une telle structure? Moi, je viens du Togo. Je voudrais bien pouvoir en parler pour que chez moi également, ça puisse être fait. Et l'autre question, c'est de savoir déjà quelle réflexion se mène au niveau de Merck Foundation pour soutenir les pays qui manifestent quand même le désir d'alléger la tâche aux populations dans le besoin. Merci.
Merci beaucoup. La question qui a été posée, c'est comment nous, on a fait au Sénégal pour pousser les autorités à investir dans l'ouverture d'un centre de procréation médicalement assistée dans le public. La réponse, elle est toute simple. C'est l'organisation des 5e éditions de la Fondation Merck à Dakar en 2018. C'est ça qui les a ouverts les yeux. Parce qu'en 2018, ça ne faisait pas partie des protocoles ni des normes et protocoles. C'était toujours la lutte contre la mortalité maternelle et infantile avec l'équité territoriale dans certains soucis. Mais quand le congrès a eu lieu à Dakar, sous l'égide du président de la République et des ministères de la Santé, avec les panels et les experts qui étaient sur place, ils se sont rendus compte de ce drame social qu'est l'infertilité. Parce qu'en réalité, dans nos protocoles en Afrique, ce sont les grands oubliés, alors qu'ils vivent un drame social. Et c'est à partir de cette période que l'État a pris la décision de construire un centre de procréation médicalement assisté. Alors, tout est bien en place. En principe, les activités devront démarrer de fécondation in vitro sous peu, mais quand même, ce centre a commencé déjà à faire tout ce qui est insémination et consorts. Pour l'instant, tout ce qui est fécondation in vitro à Dakar se fait encore dans le privé. Maintenant, par rapport au coût des médicaments, c'est pour rejoindre ce qu'avait dit tout à l'heure notre collègue. C'est ça le principal frein. Tant que nous ne nous battons pas pour que les assurances prennent en charge la prise en charge de l'infertilité, l'accès va être très difficile. Là, c'est notre combat, nous, en tant que président de la Société sénégalaise de fertilité, et nous avons une oreille attentive à travers la division de la santé et de la mère et de l'enfant, mais également avec les bailleurs. Nous avons également le GRAF, le groupe interafricain d'études et de recherche sur la fertilité, qui essaie de voir comment nous, les pays francophones, nous pouvons avoir des médicaments à moindre coût, mais également les intrants que nous utilisons dans la culture pour que la fécondation in vitro soit accessible à tout le monde. Je ne sais pas si le président a son mot à dire, le professeur Fonsegue, par rapport à cela.
Thank you very much. I will ask Professor Kolibo to add more to that.
Merci, madame. Je crois que vous venez du Togo, mais l'initiative de Girafe vient du Togo avec le docteur Fiadio de la clinique Biassa. Ouais, nous savions cela, mais il y a un travail qui se fait. Il y a un travail, je viens. Il y a un travail qui se fait. Les premières tentatives avec à Lomé ont donné quelques résultats. Aujourd'hui, ils sont en pleine expansion. Mais en dehors de Lomé, vous prenez au Niger, au Tchad, non, au Niger, au Burkina, au Sénégal, en Côte d'Ivoire. Dans les 16 pays, vous aviez des programmes dépendant des gouvernants. On essaie d'apporter ce que nous pouvons. Après réflexion, après des échanges, nous avions des résultats. Peut-être que vous ne les avez pas en tant que communicateur, mais nous travaillons dessus. Ce n'est pas facile, parce que nous ne sommes pas les ordinateurs. Merci.
I want to add to that I know that Moise Fiajo has a very good clinic in Togo. Dr. Moise Fiajo has a good clinic in Togo, and he's been working in IVF, and he's very international. He attends all our international meetings, so we know him. And it's important that if you are doing this work, you should present it internationally so that we can know what you're doing, and so that if I have problem, if I know somebody who's coming from Senegal that needs IVF, I will just say, go to your friend in Senegal. Just as people send patients to me from the US that go to Oladapo don't come to Chicago. Now, I will have opportunity for 3 more questions. The lady in yellow and the lady in pink. Any other one? And the lady at the back. It's a Women's Day today.
My name is Anne from Kenya. I've just noted this panel, there's no single woman. I don't know that you're revenging because in the morning they're all first ladies. I think I'm suspecting now this is the first gentleman, kind of. Now, my question is on the IVF. We know there's religious opposition about IVF. I don't have to mention which some of the religions we have, and they don't approve of the IVF. I don't know whether Professor Ashiru in Nigeria, do you have such, or how do you go about that?
A good question. IVF and religion. Your first comment, the first panel was a ladies panel, so, and we all listened to them. So this is a men's panel. But I think maybe the next one will be ladies panel. Now, IVF and religion. Yes, there used to be some resistance, but what I found out is very simple. One of the religions that are against it is the Muslim religion and the Catholic religion, but they have all soft paddle on it. In fact, there was a time that to my clinic, the chief imam came to the clinic and for his wife, and the wife got pregnant with a twin pregnancy, then brought the next wife, and somebody saw them and said, "What is it that you are doing?" He said, "It's acceptable." So I think we can assume that most religions are given acceptance to this. One of the things I say when people they challenge that, is that in vitro fertilization, even though it's science, the greatest of all science, the omniscience, is who? The Almighty. So if he didn't want IVF to occur on earth, he would not have permitted it. And let me tell you also, let me tell you a good news. There's still more science that we have not seen, that we have not been permitted, that we will permit. I mean, we're talking of a genome where you can now do gene editing to remove abnormalities. So these are all science talking about, so it's all been permitted. Next question is at the back. No, here, the pink one, yes. Can you give her the...
Good evening, I'm Raissa from Burundi. I'm not very good at English and I'm going to continue in French. And my questions, mes questions sont principalement adressées à professeur Thiam. Alors, elles concernent l'accès par rapport aux services de traitement d'insécurité, de prise en charge d'infertilité, pardon. Alors, vous avez mentionné que vous êtes un des premiers pays à avoir fait des avancées significatives en matière de législation en Afrique, oui. Alors, quelle a été la manière d'aborder le financement ou bien la manière d'inciter les assurances à soutenir les familles en besoin d'accompagnement en matière de traitement d'infertilité? Est-ce que vous avez seulement traité des questions d'éthique ou bien des questions d'accès économique ont aussi été traitées? Alors, j'aimerais, il y a aussi un problème de conflit, surtout en Afrique, où c'est un programme qui parfois ne converge pas avec la maîtrise de la démographie. Comment est-ce que vous avez lié ces deux aspects? Alors, j'aimerais également avoir une opinion du professeur qui vient des États-Unis parce que eux, ils ont dit qu'il y a des assurances qui couvrent ça. Ça serait comment est-ce que ça a été abordé? Alors, la seconde question, elle est adressée à Monsieur le Président de la Société africaine des spécialistes en matière d'infertilité. Est-ce qu'il y a un moyen de regrouper les performances des différents cliniques en matière d'infertilité, surtout en Afrique? Parce qu'on était en train de discuter en matière d'accessibilité. Et on a comparé plusieurs pays. Il y en a là où c'est plus accessible que d'autres. Est-ce qu'il y a moyen de rendre public les performances et que les patients, les familles qui en ont besoin puissent évaluer par rapport au coût, à l'accessibilité? Merci.
Merci beaucoup pour ces questions très intéressantes. Alors, par rapport à l'accès aux services, l'accès aux services commence d'abord par la sensibilisation et l'implication des leaders d'opinion, des journalistes. Nous nous sommes beaucoup appuyés sur eux. Et d'ailleurs, Fondation Merck joue un grand rôle là-dessus. Je pense que nous avions eu à faire un panel webinaire pour partager avec les journalistes d'Afrique francophone. Et je pense qu'il y avait d'excellents experts qui étaient là, où on a pu discuter, échanger avec des journalistes du Cameroun, du Togo et de beaucoup de pays, dont même du Burundi. Et ça a permis un tout petit peu de sensibiliser. Alors, par rapport à l'accès aux soins, ça reste encore cher. Nous nous sommes battus pour que certaines IPM puissent prendre en charge le coût de la procréation médicalement assistée, mais ce n'est pas encore tout le monde. Il y a quelques IPM qui acceptent de prendre en charge, mais le combat continue. Nous voulons suivre le pas du Nigeria pour pouvoir avoir cette possibilité et que toute patiente ou tout couple qui doit bénéficier d'une fécondation in vitro puisse avoir cette possibilité facilement. Alors, par rapport au texte, ça a été difficile. Vous savez, le Sénégal, c'est un pays assez particulier. C'est un pays à 90% musulmans et c'est une religion, la religion musulmane, elle est très confrérique. Alors, on a impliqué tous les imams avec des panels de discussion où on allait en retraite avec tout le monde pour discuter, échanger par rapport à l'acceptabilité et voir en réalité, quand on parle de fécondation in vitro, mais tous les pays musulmans le font. Et par rapport à l'interprétation de la religion, c'est là qui posait problème, mais les gens ont compris qu'en réalité, ça se fait et que la religion l'accepte. Le point où vraiment les gens ne sont pas d'accord, c'est par rapport au don. C'est pourquoi le don d'ovocytes ne se fait pas dans les pays musulmans. Donc, à ce que je sache. Donc là, mais actuellement, au Sénégal, la fécondation in vitro, elle est très acceptée et même parmi ces familles religieuses, les couples viennent par rapport à venir avec leurs épouses pour cette prise en charge. Le problème de la fécondation in vitro chez les familles religieuses et par rapport à la religion musulmane ne se pose pas au Sénégal. Par rapport au texte également, alors il a fallu être très ingénieux parce qu'il fallait légaliser également, voter des textes de loi aussi bien éthiques et économiques portant sur tout ce qui est don d'organes. Alors, il fallait jouer sur ça. Donc, on a eu à faire des réunions, des panels, des comités de dons où il y avait les FIVistes, les urologues, les dons de reins, ainsi de suite, pour pouvoir avoir un texte assez global qui puisse nous permettre de travailler dans les conditions les meilleures et avoir les résultats escomptés. Donc, c'est ça qui nous a permis. Mais il faut savoir également que le Cameroun a son texte également depuis 2 ans environ. Je pense que le président pourra apporter quelques éclaircissements là-dessus. Je pense avoir répondu aux questions. Merci.
Well, let me just, I will answer your question, but also comment on regulation. We have to be careful when we talk about regulation with the lawmakers. In Nigeria, what we have that is currently operational is what we call guidelines produced by the professionals in this act to self-regulate ourselves, auto-regulation. Now, because what we found out is that we've been trying to have the global legislation, the national legislation on this But what have these people do, the lawmakers? They've gone to somewhere like, I will tell you, India or Britain, and brought the law from there, and they'll just copy and paste to apply for Nigeria. So by the time they send it to me, I said, this doesn't apply to us. For example, in India, they don't allow surrogacy, but we practice it in Nigeria. So why do you do that law? Because it's not, then, you have to make the law relevant to your country. But more importantly, is the guidelines that will guide the professionals on what they are supposed to do, the type of qualifications that people who run that place will have, which sometimes the legislation does not cover. So now in terms of the having access registry, what we found out is that I don't understand it, but even in Nigeria, I told you we have 190 clinics. Of these 190 clinics, only 25 are reporting the number of cycles they're doing in a year. So we are appealing to them, tell us the number of cycles. So we have to go in stages. Let us even know the number of clinics in Ghana, in Burundi, in Senegal, in Ethiopia. Let's even have those numbers. And then let's go to the next level. How many cycles do you do in a year? Let's have that before we can go to getting their success rate. Only few clinics can publish their success rate. We publish our own, but because people are afraid that if they show that they are getting maybe 15%, 20% success rate, people will not want to, but you improve. And we are telling people to begin to do that also. But I think I can assure you that if people here are willing, we'll start doing something like even if it's at this compendium, doing Merck Luminary, to put a list of clinics doing IVF and the number of clinics where they are in all the countries of Africa. That will help us and because I will tell you, I have a mandate to present this data in the World Congress in Tokyo in April, and I'm supposed to represent Africa. So I'm trying to collect the data. Please, if you are doing something, reach me at the end of this talk. I will give you my email so you can send me the data so that your name, the name of your country can appear in the global data. Thank you. I think Dr. Ediam Yaji has a question.
Oh, no, it's not a question. I just realized a lot of people feel it's a very daunting task to manage to practice IVF in Africa the way it is outside, vis-a-vis funding, number of centers in the countries, manpower, etc. I say I'm not an alumni of Merck Foundation, but I'm a convict of Merck Foundation. Why do I say that? It was their luminary in Kenya that stirred something up in me to do more than I was doing on my own. At the time, I think it was Merck wanted me to represent Ghana at this luminary. The year before that, Professor Shiru had this meeting in Lisbon at the Esre and wrote to me that he's heard about me in Ghana and he thinks we should do something for Africa. So at this luminary, I met him and Prof. Olobulalo. As they started talking of us doing things in Africa, the first thing that struck me was, in Ghana, we don't even have a fertility society. So how are we going to start talking Africa? So anybody who is here, a Merck Foundation alumni, and you don't have a fertility society in your country, start working on that. It's very important because then you have a mouthpiece for people in reproductive medicine in your country. So quickly, I started gathering out people. Most places, it starts in the private sector because it's expensive. And most countries in Africa have a poor economy. They're thinking of how to manage malaria, typhoid, hypertension, and all those. And that is the last thing they're thinking about, even though they know they need it, because it is capital intensive. Everywhere, IVF is expensive. But once the economy of that country starts going up, then insurance can take up a bit of this and that. So we did that. Once we formed the society, it started picking up interest of other people who were in, people who knew there was something like IVF, wanted to learn about it. So we were able to get more gynecologists, embryologists interested, even lab people who were thinking, maybe they want to be an embryologist. They started joining. And quite quickly, we had our brothers and sisters from Nigeria joining our meetings, who would join this. And then after 3 years, we had an international workshop. The International Federation of Fertility Societies attended. And during that period, Fertility Nurses Society was formed during that workshop. During that workshop, we started developing or talking about development of curricula for training reproductive endocrinologists and infertility in Ghana. And within a year, the curriculum was drawn, sent to the Ghana College of Physicians and Surgeons, and then the National Accreditation Board. And once they approved of it, we had to look for faculty. Where do you get faculty? There's no IVF facility in the public sector. We, those in the private sector, had to offer our services for that. By this time, because of COVID, which propelled the use of virtual meetings and the rest, it was much easier. You didn't have to rush to the teaching hospital or something. You just connected on your virtual platform and training was done. So this year, the first batch of reproductive endocrinologists passed out in Ghana. So that is supporting Merck's capacity building locally. During this period, we developed curriculum for training fertility nurses. That has been rolled out this September, so people have started that training. We're working seriously on the embryologist platform, and the IFFS is very supportive of this. Their educational committee is prepared to have meetings with you to look at curriculum and develop all that. In fact, the nurses program developed with IFFS was presented at the African Federation Society's first Congress in Tunisia this year, April, and even won an award for that. So I believe that little by little, once the interest is there, get your people together in your country, get support from others who have started, and like, who was the lady? One of the first ladies spoke about, together we would be visible and together we will win. Did you hear that? Yeah, that is it. So gradually we can build capacity in Africa as well and do more for our people. Regarding cost of treatment, I'm not sure. Prof had been thinking about getting data because maybe Africans may need something different, but if we don't send our data to the IFFS and to ANARA, we would not know if there's something, unique about us that will modify what is on the global platform. So thanks again to Merck Foundation, because they're doing what we should be doing for us, and we need to support them by also growing individually in our various countries, getting together and getting help from them. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Adam Hiaji. That is a typical story that we cannot overemphasize what Merck Foundation is doing. When I became the Secretary General of the International Federation of Fertility, one of my mandates was to increase the membership from Africa. How will I know them? How do I get the address of Burundi or Zambia or Ivory Coast? How from Africa we are blocked? The colonial people did a bad job for us. That sometimes to go to Tunisia, where we went in, they did. When we went for a conference of the Africa, I had to take a plane first to Europe and then go back to Africa. They did a bad job. Now, but we can change that scenario, because this opportunity was what enabled me to meet Africans. Like he was saying, I met him from Ghana. Okay, fine. Start a society. And they are now a big shot in IFFS. I was happy when I saw somebody today from Zambia who said they finished their application. Now, don't let us lose this opportunity of togetherness. It gives us an opportunity to network and to develop the brotherhood that it is and the sisterhood that we are supposed to do in Africa, which we were deprived of for many years. I thank Professor Frank Stagenberg for doing this, for spending this kind of fund on this togetherness. Is very useful. And now the voice of Africa is heard globally in this field of reproductive medicine, in the field of oncology, and in all these areas. I think the lady there has a question.
Thank you very much. I have two quick questions. The first is, at what point would one go for fertility evaluation? Like for cancer, you are told when you get to a certain level, you're seeing these kinds of symptoms. So I don't know what we would tell people about fertility evaluation. The second is, there are scientists who are sitting in the panel, and I would be interested to know what is the place of traditional knowledge on infertility, especially with the goings on in research, science, development, because perhaps that's where a part of where the conversation needs to begin, so that when the man comes, he's not coming to bring his wife, but they are coming together. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. At what point does fertility investigation start? By the WHO, I want to expand it beyond that. Fertility investigation starts from the prevention. And what we are recommending now is that right from secondary school, students need to be taught about things that can lead to infertility, like sexually transmitted disease, like gonorrhea, chlamydia. They need to be thought about that. And so many other things. And I'm adding environmental issues. Many people ended up with infertility without knowing what they were doing was wrong. The second point is that by WHO, if you are married or you have attempted conception with regular intercourse for 9 months and there's no conception, you need to see a doctor because that is infertility. But that has further been modified that if you are married, you need to begin to read about ovulation and how you can get ready to get pregnant. Things that you should not be eating, like according to the American College of Obstetrics, a large fish that contains mercury or stockfish, which can affect your fertility. So you need to prevent that. And lastly, that if you have tried your infertility for with a doctor for some time and you're not getting result, you need to escalate it to a specialist. And lastly, if you are over 30 and you got married and you're not getting pregnant, you don't have to wait for that 9 months before you start seeing a doctor. Why? It is important for women to know that the ovulation, the number of eggs they have will start to decrease, and by 35, they will be at about 15% fertility, while at 25, they are 25% fertility. At 2025, by the time you are 35, it has gone to 15%, and by the time you are 48, it has approached 2%. So this information is very important. So you, whatever you want to do, if you want to do fertility preservation because you are not yet married or you are not yet decided, by the time you are between 35 and 36, you better preserve those eggs so you can use it later. By the time you are approaching 40, rather than give about 10 eggs, you may be ending up with 2 or 4. Thank you.
All right. We'll just quickly answer her second question on traditional knowledge.
Yeah,
then we wrap
traditional
this up.
knowledge.
Yeah.
The traditional knowledge, I am not so sure what that is, because sometimes some of these traditional knowledge, in as much as they could be very useful, many of our government people, they've not established what we call a center that has a traditional center where things they're doing can be transparent and can be documented and can be reproduced. Because people will say that they want to treat fibroid and they're giving some herbs to expel fibroid of 20 weeks pregnancy. I don't see how that is going to be happening. So I think we have almost reached the end of this panel discussion. I will summarize that we've had contributions that showed us how Merck Foundation came into this objective vision and how they have recruited partners. Some of them have spoken today, and collaborators to help expand the dream. And one significant thing they did was to use the machinery of government in each country, using the ministers of health and using the first ladies, and this has actually been magnificent. And lastly, we've had all the issues about fertility, about IVF, about prevention. The objective here is more than a mother. If you can't have a baby, through all the technologies, you can be a mother, because womanhood is still superior to motherhood. You don't have to have a mother. You can a baby. You can adopt, and you can still be nice to children around you. And lastly, that we should, in our various capacity, work towards more joy to families, encourage our government institutions, our public institutions to help people who want to have a baby, to give them opportunity to go to the doctor, and if possible, to have funding or insurance that can support this. And if your clinic is doing very well, you can do what we call free help for those who need it. In Nigeria, we have foundations for those who help people to have babies. And I thank the panel. It's been an exciting afternoon. I thank you all for coming, and I thank you all for listening and being participatory. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Olade, Professor Ashiru. Thank you. And to all our panelists, thank you so much for sharing. It is 5:45. At 7 o'clock, I request us to be back here. We have prepared a fantastic dinner for you. But in the meantime, please proceed to floor 8. There are some activities that are also there for you, and more opportunities for you to network and ask the questions and get to learn from each other. So see you at 7 o'clock here. Yeah, 7 here for dinner. But for now, floor 8, floor 8. Thank you.
It's just for you. You wanna get smart, build up that passion in your heart, then you gotta know education's where it starts.